Amazing saving speedruns are some of the most obscure, yet one of the most difficult. The normal any percent speedrun requires unbelievably fast mashing speeds. But one really interesting category in amazing savings is tutorial percent. Tutorial percent speedruns have become probably the most optimized category in amazing savings. And over the past year, it's probably became one of the most coveted categories ever in amazing savings. This is the history of amazing savings tutorial percent world records. Now actually tracking the first world records might be a bit problematic, but I'll try to explain. There's a good chance that there could have been world records set even before the leaderboard's existence, when it was made on April 10, 2022. The first probable run was from a runner you might have heard of before, TYS, who set a time of 48.07. But there's one specific run that's mostly unanimously considered to be the first run of tutorial percent. We will take a look at the run, as it has video. The run was performed on April 10, 2022. The runner was MN85, and his final time was a time of 43 seconds and 280 milliseconds. First off, I need to talk about a major part about when the narrator speaks. Whenever the narrator speaks, he takes a lot of time to talk. And whenever he talks, you can't move. The ending monologue is 12.1 seconds long, which is incredibly long. Keep this in mind as there will be a major glitch that caused a change in the leaderboard. MN85's first major bad thing was this. It's called a cheese pack, which is the only major RNG swing in amazing saving speedrunning. Whenever you get the cheese pack, you will get between 5 to 25 cheese. If you get 9 or less cheese from the cheese pack in modern speedruns, your run is over, as it would take too much time going to get some extra cheese. Next up is the paint item part. He had to pick it up quickly, then react fast by clicking the paint button, but MN85 wasn't able to do that, and slowly changed his color to red. And finally, there was the magnet. The creators of the tutorial stage put 50 cheese to open the door for the key. So, he had to open the gate where the magnet was, then be 1 block away from the key, and then pick it up. The narrator then speaks for his 12.1 second long dialogue, and finally, after the narrator's long monologue, you can move again and can enter the key door where the run ends. The run was obviously the first speedrun of the game, and had some improvements. He lost a lot of time from a bad paint part, and lost some more time from a mediocre magnet part. But it was still a new world record. A day later, TYS would come back and set a brand new world record, 41.590. It had a slightly slower paint section, but had a better magnet section. It would stand for around 2 days, when a new runner, DaysFullOfDominos, would set the first sub 40, 35.256. DaysFullOfDominos had been practicing to get the world record. He also held the any percent world record for the game, with a 131.826. He got a way faster paint section, although with a slowdown, and a better magnet section. But even with slowdowns, it was way faster than TYS's old time, and still was a world record and the first sub 40. The leaderboard would stay dormant for 2 days. TYS was focusing on other games such as Super Mike World 2, Mario Editor, and many more games, and for the others, there just wasn't much activity. But finally, another new runner would come. This is Astrolite 1337. He's ran games like Super Mario Odyssey, Bowser's Fury, Mario Kart 8, Splatoon, and many other games. But he's also speedrun obscure web games, and one of them is Amazing Savings. And on April 16, 2022, Astrolite would beat the world record, with a 30.15. It was pretty much perfect. He got a very fast paint section, good cheese pack RNG, and he also did this smart move. Instead of getting the key at the top, you can get it from the right, saving roughly a second. And so, it stood, and stood. But then, after Astrolite's 30.15, the leaderboard went dormant, no new tutorial or even any percent speedruns were being posted. And so, it stood, for a full year. Since Amazing Savings was obscure, nobody knew about it, and no one speedrun it. New people were running it, but they were nowhere near close to world record. But what's interesting is that this was made by Pearson, which is the best-selling textbook publisher ever, and yet nobody has seen Amazing Savings. There's a good chance, however, that nobody has seen their Game Center. This website does indeed have Amazing Savings, so probably nobody knew that there was even a Game Center. But then, someone would set a time that would change the tutorial leaderboards. This is Aimbo. On July 16, 2022, 2 months after Astrolite's world record, Aimbo set a time that would change the tutorial leaderboards. It clocked in at 16.2. But there's something different about this run. See, most tutorial speedruns used no glitches, but Aimbo had other plans. What you just saw were Amazing Savings tutorial dialogue skips. They're very complicated to explain, but thanks to some runners it's been understood. There are 2 of them, and I will talk about them in order. The first skip saves roughly 6 to 7 seconds. If you overlap the trigger for the end of the narrator's dialogue to the first line that the narrator says, the ending for the last speeches gets overlapped onto the first speech of the tutorial. This allows you to end the first speech early, and go straight to the cheese pack. It was trivially easy to do, and is a big time saver. Next up is the second dialogue skip. When using the magnet, if you're not close to a key, the game would pop up with a message telling you that you're not close to the key. And when trying to open a gate, you get this option screen. You can actually overlap those 2 screens. You only have a roughly 3-frame window to time the magnet and gate overlap, but it can save up to 11 seconds. This changed tutorial percent into no dialogue skips or with dialogue skips. But for the sake of this video, we will be talking about tutorial percent no dialogue skip. Even when Aimbo set the 16.2, tutorial percent was still dormant. But finally, over a year later, someone would break through. On April 19, 2023, a runner named TheRunRunner would break through, beating the year-old world record. They got the first sub-30, beating the record by just 0.4 of a second. 29 seconds, and 700 milliseconds. TheRunRunner would use some of the strategies that Astrolite used. However, his mashing was amazing. Whenever the gate text opens up, you have to quickly press enter to close it out and enter the door. Astrolite wasn't that great at mashing, but was still fast. However, TheRunRunner's mashing was incredibly faster than Astrolite's, allowing him to be almost an entire second ahead. TheRunRunner would get a 4-frame long gate in the cheese pack, while Astrolite's cost 8 frames. And then, the paint section. The gate to the paint for Astrolite cost 6 frames, and the paint change cost him 26 frames because he used the mobile keys instead of keyboard. For TheRunRunner, however, the gate cost him 6 frames, and the paint cost just 2 frames. It was so fast that the paint wasn't even on screen. And finally, after a year, the 30.15 was no longer the time to beat. The record was unbelievable, nobody was close, second place was nearly a second behind. And so, it stood. Wait a minute. TYS had been a runner before, back when the run was nearly 20 seconds slower. And there was a lot of time to save to make TYS contest than TheRunRunner's world record. And in April 24, 2023, he would start up a run. He would start up a run, and tie the TheRunRunner with a 4-frame cheese pack gate. Then a 16-frame paint, losing him time. But he kept it close thanks to his movement and a better magnet gate, resulting in a 29.5 new world record by 0.2 of a second. Finally, after a year, TYS was back to running amazing savings. But he wasn't proud of this run. The paint door cost him over 0.266 seconds. That's an unbelievably long time for tutorial percent. So, as a result of this happening, TYS would decide to heavily focus on amazing savings tutorial percent. Even though it could take him a long time to get world records, he was adamant that he could do it. And so, he would start to focus a lot. With a run with a 16-frame gate, he could take the record very low down. He could save up to half a second. That's a big time saver for tutorial percent. And so, when he started the grind, he would try to lower the time as much as he physically could. There were barely any time saves, but with nobody active, he could plan out his strategies for a long time. And so, throughout the rest of April, and most of May, this is what he'd do to the record. In the span of just a week, TYS would set 4 records. This resulted in a 29.1, beating the old 29.5 by over 0.4 of a second. It started with a 4-frame cheese pack gate, but then, he got a 2-frame paint gate. And he also got a 1-frame paint change, which was so fast that you couldn't even see it on screen. Tutorial percent was quickly becoming a very optimized speedrun. Everything in the 29.1 was perfect. It was like there was no more time saved. But then, just a day after the 29.1, an unbelievable discovery was found by TYS. On May 2, 2023, TYS would find an interesting discovery. And unbelievably, if you were able to pull it off without mistakes, you could save up to half a second, which is once again a massive time saver. It was actually trivially easy to perform, like most of the glitches found in Amazing Savings, but it doesn't skip the dialogue. The execution was just like the normal tutorial percent dialogue skip. The glitch itself was similar to another glitch used in tutorial percent with dialogue skips. But the way it worked was way different. Welcome to the world of the movement early skip. Taking a page from the first dialogue skip in normal tutorial percent, if you this time overlap the first dialogue in the tutorial with the same dialogue again, something strange happens. You can move early, which allows you to move around while the dialogue goes on. But then, it starts to get technical. See, the cheese pack dialogue doesn't activate, so to start the next dialogue, you have to go back and forth to the barrier where it blocks you until you get the cheese pack. And so, with this strategy, TYS would set a new world record, 29.067. It did have a mistake that lost him roughly 0.3 seconds, which he accidentally pressed down at the start, but the time saved from movement early skip allowed it to still be a record. After he set the 29.067, he would take a trip out of his home state. He would be gone between May 3rd to May 7th, meaning that he would be gone for the next 5 days. Thankfully, nobody was trying to beat his time, and he could rest in the place he was at. And then, came May 8, 2023, when the craziest run would happen. Everything was aligning, saving time at the end, and having great mashing throughout the tutorial. All he had to do was close the run out. This marked the first time TYS would ever break a barrier in the category. After nearly a full year of running not only tutorial percent, but the game itself, he had just broke one of the hardest barriers ever. There was still more to go, but this was a massive and unexpected record from TYS. And now, he had just broken the sub-29 barrier. This was thanks to cleaning up his old, unpolished run. At the start at his 29.067, he accidentally pressed down at the start, losing him around 0.2 to 0.3 seconds. But in his 28.733, he cleaned up that mistake, and saved some time. TYS could finally rest. After a break, he just did the impossible. But unbelievably, TYS's world record would stand for 2 days. Because on May 11, 2023, after a 22-day long break, guess who came back? Well, it was none other than TheRunRunner. And he would beat TYS's world record, with a 28.367. The run itself was similar to TYS's former record. But the run got real in the cheesepack gate. TYS had to face a 6-frame cheese gate, but for the TheRunRunner, his gate cost 4 frames. He then lost time on the paint gate and the magnet gate, losing him 2 frames for both, to be precise. But even though he got slower gates, he was able to optimize the movement just enough to snatch TYS's world record by 0.365 seconds. From the gates the TheRunRunner got, you could save up to 4 frames, or 0.067 seconds. Once again, there was more time to save in the world record. But funnily enough, just 2 days later, TYS would respond, with a 0.2 world record improvement. Keeping the theme from most runs, his gates were better. TYS would get an unbelievable 1-frame cheese gate, saving 3 frames. He'd then get 1-frame paint gate, and then a 2-frame paint change. Sadly, he'd get a 12-frame magnet gate, losing him 0.2 seconds. But the time saved from both the frame-long cheese pack and paint gates made up for that, and still was a record by a considerable amount of time. And so, the 28.167 was now the new world record. And then, came May 15, 2023, when the most unbelievable thing happened to his account. On that day, TYS's account was banned, without any reason. To this day, TYS is trying his best to get his account unbanned. Thankfully, his friends, the Islander and Brian Chovies, are taking over his account and helping to still include his runs on speedrun.com. Here's a slight interview from him.
So, I watched roughly an hour-long video. After finishing it, I went on my speedrun.com account, and I noticed the moderator thing was gone, the hourglass thing. So I go on my profile and guess what I find? Under my username, banned indefinitely. I'm still trying to contact support, but they've taken nearly a full week since I first contacted them.
It's been 6 days since his account was banned, and I'm really hoping he gets it back. And so, both Amazing Savings and TYS's account would stay dormant for a pretty long time. It stood for way longer than the other runs, but thankfully, a week later, TYS would pull through with the current world record. A 28.133, a new world record, by just 0.034 seconds. Although not having great gates, TYS was able to get a faster movement early skip, on top of slightly optimizing movement. Just nearly a year ago, nearly nobody played Amazing Savings tutorial percent. That also happened to any percent, but now, nearly a year after the leaderboards were made, tutorial percent no dialogue skip is now the most popular category in the game. There might be more to go for tutorial percent, but it's really tough to save time now. Small chunks of times avenue now exist, not the large ones like the early days. Just a year ago, everyone was making mistakes on tutorial percent. Now, your run has to be perfect. And over the course of a year, that's how the world record was improved. This has been the history of amazing savings tutorial percent world records. Thanks for watching.